East Sand Island. This is the east end of the island right here. It's where the tern colony is.
In the middle of the Columbia River, right near its mouth, sits an island off limits to everyone except a handful of scientists and an enormous number of birds. It takes 2 boats to reach land. A Zodiac makes the final transfer to shore. A small team of colony monitors will spend breeding season living out in the same weather endured by the birds they watch. They rough it for several months.
Yesterday's high tide count was really high.
It was?
Yeah.
Nice.
East Sand Island is the site of a great experiment with an unexpected and disappointing setback. Biologists had hoped to save millions of young salmon by removing the birds that ate them. So began a forced relocation of thousands of wild Caspian terns.
This trail is taking us to the north side of the island, and from there we'll be able to access one of the tern blinds.
Lauren Reynalda leads the field crews who study the giant colony. Watching them means getting close to them, but Caspian terns don't much like humans nearby. Our presence sets off loud alarms.
They're letting us know that they see us. We're gonna get dive bombed a little bit, but they won't ever hit us. There's other tern colonies where people have to wear helmets and put sticks and stuff out of their heads so that they don't get hit, but these birds are all talk. We have 2 people that live full-time on the island, and they monitor the tern colony. Hey. How's the colony?
Wonderful. Full of eggs.
The colony monitors count birds. They watch eggs. Perhaps most important, they track the fish that the terns bring back to feed their mates.
They eat a lot of different kind of fish. We've seen probably 6 or 7 varieties of fish that they bring back a lot.
Eating half a dozen kinds of fish is a big improvement. Look back 10 years and you'd see 90% of what terns used to eat consisted of one thing: salmon. Humans decided they had to save endangered salmon from birds which are also federally protected.
It's worth cutting down their consumption of salmon smolt, I think, because it's an area that we've had a big impact as humans.
It goes back to decades of dredging the Columbia River. The Army Corps of Engineers had dumped the sand it dug up and created a new island. That bare sand was perfect for Caspian terns.
This island, which is an artificial island, has provided the perfect habitat.
This was Rice Island, upstream of the Astoria Bridge. Just far away enough from ocean fish that the terns feasted almost entirely on endangered juvenile salmon. When Field Guide last visited, biologists had won permission to try to drive the terns off Rice Island without harming them. They messed up their nesting grounds and put in plants. 15 miles downstream, at the edge of the ocean, they cleared new nest sites on East Sand Island and planted decoys. They hoped the terns would follow.
And it worked amazingly well. Much to our surprise, it dramatically changed their diet almost as soon as they moved. Their diet and the proportion of their diet that was salmon declined by 50%.
Dan Roby teaches wildlife ecology at Oregon State. He says millions more salmon survived in the first 6 years after the terns moved.
A rough estimate might be 40 million fewer salmon consumed.
The relocation may have worked too well. The size of the tern colony is even larger than before. They are eating other kinds of fish, but their sheer numbers still pose a threat to the salmon. Biologists now want to lure terns from their new nesting ground away from the Columbia River entirely.
Well, this is a brand new island that was just built in February of 2008.
Near Eugene, the Army Corps of Engineers stacked 30,000 tons of rock and gravel in the middle of Fern Ridge Reservoir. This 1-acre man-made island cost $750,000. a solar-powered sound system creates what they call social attraction.
We have speakers which are broadcasting what we like to call Caspian Tern's greatest hits, which are basically just the calls that we've recorded at East Sand Island.
275 wooden decoy terns sit and wait for company to arrive.
The birds seem to think that this is a pretty good resemblance to a live Caspian tern, because we've seen adult Caspian terns come up to these decoys and offer them fish. So far we haven't seen any Caspian terns in the Fern Ridge area this year, so we're waiting for the first arrival.
They're creating several new nest sites like this in Oregon and California.
We have about 2/3 of the entire Pacific Coast population of Caspian terns nesting at that one colony on East Sand Island. We'd like to see a more even distribution of Caspian terns throughout the Pacific region, including the Pacific Northwest.
Until the terns notice the Fern Ridge welcome mat, most seem to be staying put in the Columbia. The lure to East Sand Island worked so well, it now holds the world's largest colony of Caspian terns, 20,000 birds. And there our story might end, except for a surprise development over the last 7 years at the other end of East Sand Island. 28,000 more birds have moved in. The world's largest colony of double-crested cormorants has arrived, and they are even hungrier for salmon.
They have added a twist, that's for sure.
Lauren Reynalda must hike south for 30 minutes across a mudflat to see the cormorants up close. Access will last only for a few hours until the tide comes back in.
We will walk at a low tide and crawl up the beach and then crawl through a series of tunnels.
They get closer to cormorants than to any other bird they watch.
It's a little bit smelly, sandy, sometimes wet, but it's real neat because you end up crawling through the cormorants. There's cormorants that nest right up next to the tunnel.
Her team built above-ground tunnels before the birds were here. Small wooden A-frames support black fabric.
Their nests are touching the fabric of the tunnels.
It takes almost 10 minutes of crawling on hands and knees to reach the blind.
It's pretty neat to be able to get this close to them when they're doing their thing and they have no idea that you're here.
Apparently, the birds confuse the sounds people make in the tunnels with the enormous racket of their own colony. And as for human aromas, that is not even a factor.
They cannot smell. Cormorants don't have nares, which are nostrils for birds, and so cormorants don't have any way to smell us. We're right about the middle of the colony. The windows have a one-way glass on them, and so since there's not any light in this blind, we can see out, but they can't see in. If there were no walls, you could just reach your arm out and touch them.
Only in mating season do they sport plumage and bright colors.
They're a fascinating bird. From a distance, they look like black, drab birds, and then you get up close and they're spectacular. That bird's sitting in a nest that contains, I believe, 4 eggs.
This is just a side blind. The researchers' network of tunnels also leads to a 20-foot tall observation tower.
We've got one main tunnel that leads to our observation tower where the majority of our data is collected. This tower allows us to get a 360-degree view of the entire cormorant colony.
2/3 of the entire Pacific Coast population of cormorants nests here on East Sand Island.
They're fully occupying about half the island.
They don't know why so many cormorants from small scattered colonies have decided now to nest here together. But much like terns, it's likely that human disturbance has driven them from previous habitats.
We watch them go about their daily lives, and especially right now when they're breeding, they're at one of the most stressful points in their year. And so you're getting to see kind of a very special period in their life.
Just as with the terns, the monitors watch what kinds of fish the cormorants eat. Biologists estimate the cormorants consume 10 million salmon a year.
It's in the neighborhood of what the Caspian terns were consuming on an annual basis back when they were on Rice Island.
With two huge groups of birds now in one place, the threat to the salmon is stronger than ever. Next, biologists must decide if they'll try to do something about all the cormorants. In the Great Lakes, giant flocks of cormorants have been culled.
Cull means shoot. The majority of birds, they go out there and shoot hundreds, if not thousands of birds at a time.
Biologists here are looking for alternatives and may want to move cormorants out, the way they did terns 10 years ago.
I'm sure it'll be controversial, and I think it will take a lot of careful study. We don't know if it's going to be possible to manage cormorants as successfully as we've been able to manage Caspian terns. But it seems like it's worth a try.